What really happened between Leandria Johnson and Bishop T.D. Jakes? That's the question people have been quietly asking for years. At first glance, it seemed like just another gospel world fallout. But what if it went deeper? What if what happened was less about a disagreement and more about the pressure, the image, and the pain that often gets swept under the pulpit rug? Leandria's story has always been wrapped in rawness, her voice, her truth, her past stand. When it all started unraveling, people couldn't look away. Leandria didn't sneak into the gospel spotlight, she burst through the doors. Winning Bet's Sunday Best in 2010 was just the beginning. Her voice, filled with grit and heartache, had a way of making people feel seen. She wasn't polished, but she was powerful. That's what drew people in, especially church folks who knew pain but didn't always know how to talk about it. She wasn't like the others. And yet somehow, that made her a perfect fit for the glitzy, image-obsessed world of mega ministries. Enter Bishop T.D. Jakes, the man behind the Potter's House, best-selling books, and movies like Woman, Thou Art Loosed. He was the master of turning pain into purpose, and from the outside, it made sense. For someone like Leandria to cross paths with someone like him. And they did. For a while, it looked like a spiritual match. She sang at events tied to his name, lit up stages at major conferences, and became a familiar voice in rooms full of powerful people. But not everything glittered like it seemed. Even at her peak, Leandria was fighting demons behind closed doors. Addiction, trauma, and personal battles were never far from her surface. But, unlike most, she didn't hide it. She was the gospel singer who'd tell you she was broken while holding a mic. That brutal honesty, the same quality that won hearts, started to make some church leaders uncomfortable. The pressure to be perfect, to behave, to fit a certain image IT weighed on her. And slowly, the support system that once lifted her up began to pull away, according to people close to her. Leandria hoped for more than just bookings. She wanted guidance, spiritual covering, and understanding from leaders like Jakes. But when the emotional toll of performing became too heavy, she felt abandoned. After one especially emotional event, sources say she left in tears. She wasn't just tired, she felt used. It's not long after the invitations slowed. And then they stopped by 2018. Leandria wasn't holding back anymore. She went live on Instagram and let the world have it. No filter, no script. She called out the hypocrisy in the church, saying she was sick of being paraded on stages, while battling hell behind the scenes. She wasn't vague either without dropping names. She made it clear she was done with the platforms that loved her gift but ignored her pain. And many believed Bishop Jakes was one of those she was referencing. Whether or not she meant him specifically, the implication was strong. Her comments sent shockwaves through the gospel community. She declared she wasn't stepping foot into another church, not singing, not performing, not pretending. Her words hit nerves, but more than that, they cracked open conversations people were too afraid to have. And the gospel world, it didn't take kindly to it. Overnight, she went from beloved to blacklisted. Behind the scenes, sources claim her name was quietly removed from event lineups. Collaborations were canceled, and her access to some of the most powerful platforms in gospel was gone. T.D. Jakes didn't say a word publicly. But insiders say his team made it known. Leandria was no longer welcome under his ministry's umbrella. Still, she didn't stay silent. If anything, she grew louder. In interviews, she began naming the pain behind the praise, talking about how the church profits off broken people but disappears when those same people need real help. She said it plainly, "Y'all love my gift, but you don't love me." And for so many people, that line hit home. Her words gave voice to a quiet frustration in the gospel community. The people in the pews started speaking out. Hashtags popped up. "I Stand with Leandria" started trending. Fans who'd been hurt, overlooked, or pushed out of church spaces found solace in her story. She became more than a singer. She became a symbol. Meanwhile, her silence from events tied to Bishop Jakes became louder than words. She was no longer showing up at his festivals. Her name was gone from his productions. Some even believe one of his sermons, where he criticized reckless mouths. And people who confuse anointing with rebellion was indirectly aimed at her. The timing certainly raised eyebrows. But instead of shrinking under the pressure, Leandria rose. Not in the traditional way, not with church endorsements or award show shoutouts, but with authenticity. Her fan base exploded. Younger listeners, especially those tired of church politics, rallied behind her. They weren't looking for perfection. They wanted honesty. And Leandria gave it in spades. She started showing up in unconventional places. Not on stages with spotlights, but on the streets, ministering to the homeless, barefoot in jeans and a t-shirt. No cameras. No fanfare, just her, being real. Those moments resonated more deeply than any church production ever could. People commented, "This is what ministry looks like." And they meant it. Her music didn't stop either. It just found new life online. Independently, without gatekeepers, without the big names backing her, she released songs and videos that spoke to the brokenhearted. She talked about healing, about walking through fire and still standing, and people listened. They shared her music, her messages, her moments. She became the heartbeat of a new kind of gospel. Other artists started speaking up too, maybe not as boldly, but enough to show they were watching. Artists like Tasha Page, Lockhart, Tonex, and others who've wrestled with the constraints of church tradition began to express support, sometimes openly, sometimes subtly. Leandria's courage gave them permission to embrace their own stories. And while some doors shut, others opened. Her shows started selling out, not in arenas filled with gospel gatekeepers, but in local venues packed with people hungry for something real. She didn't need a cosign from Bishop Jakes anymore. Her truth became her platform. When a fan once asked her if she'd ever go back to a Bishop Jakes-led event, Jay said, "I don't hate nobody, but I'm not going back into any room where my pain is ignored. I'd rather sing on a corner and be heard than stand on a stage and be silenced." That one sentence told us everything we needed to know about where she stood. It wasn't bitterness, it was boundaries. The silence from church leaders like Jakes wasn't just about public image. It was strategy. Leaders in mega ministries know that direct engagement could fuel controversy. So instead, they remain silent. No statements, no clarifications. It's just a quiet removal from the spotlight. But silence, in this case, spoke volumes. And fans noticed what started as a clash between a gospel powerhouse and a mega ministry turned into a movement. A mirror was held up to the church, and what was reflected wasn't always pretty. But it was necessary. Leandria's journey forced a conversation about how we treat our spiritual leaders, our gospel artists, and our wounded, about whether we really want transparency or just the illusion of it. She didn't just call out the system. She walked away from it and proved that faith, power, and ministry don't need to be tied to a stage or a spotlight. They can exist in the raw, in the real, in the places we often overlook. And even now, without the backing of bishops or the embrace of the gospel elite. She remains one of the most streamed, most talked about, and most respected voices in gospel today. Not because she conformed, but because she didn't. Because she stayed true to herself even when it cost her everything the industry values. And in doing that, she showed others that it's okay to question, to hurt, to speak and still believe. She didn't just sing gospel, she lived it.